Welcome back to Total Disclosure. My name's Ty, and tonight I am so excited to get into this episode. This is something, or this is at least a case, an episode that I've been looking forward to for a long time. I've been doing this for 5 years, podcasting for much longer than that, and someone who I've been watching for a very long time. I finally get the chance to speak with him. December 1980, deep in quiet English forest, a young U.S. airman stepped forward towards a pulsing light that should not have been there. And nothing in his life, or even in the UFO history, would ever be the same. We're going to revisit the Rendlesham Forest Incident through the eyes of the man who lived it up close. Closer than anyone, most people. A man whose encounters were so real, so physical, and so undeniable that the United States government quietly granted him full VA disability. At first, or the first case in history, linked directly to a UFO event. John F. Burroughs is here. He was there that night, that weekend in December. He approached the craft, and he may have paid the price for it. Before we dive in, make sure you're subscribed to Total Disclosure on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your shows. Hit that like button. Share this with someone that you know loves the topic, and help support. It's really, really great. Best way to help. All right. I gotta get into this one. I had some banter ready, but I think I kind of just want to get right into it. So with that being said, guys, I'll see you on the other side. Let's get right into it. I couldn't even read my own handwriting on the intro slip, and I had to I couldn't read the banter part. But John, thank you for being here, man.
Thanks for having me on.
So embarrassing. I don't get nervous before shows, but I literally can't even read my own handwriting. I feel like an idiot right now. But you have been someone that, listen, I mean, I'm 32, so I have been, what your case was, the Rendlesham case in general was one that I came across pretty early on. I mean, pretty early on when I had my own sighting, and I made my mom bring me to the library and, teach me as much as much information as I could get on UFOs and what they might be, who they could be piloted by. The Rendlesham case came up pretty quick. I don't know how quick, but it was one that I knew about pretty much right after my sighting. So that was about 20 years ago. So sometime after that, I started watching pretty much anything I could get my hands on. And that's when I came across you, Jim Peniston. And obviously everyone knows this case, knows obviously the recording from the base commander, Charles Hall. So I just want to say, I mean, thank you. You've gone through so much, and this community can be a little relentless, but you've kept pushing on, and you just have a pretty incredible story. So I just wanted to say thank you for your service.
Right. Well, I appreciate that.
Before we jump into the events of Rendlesham, can you tell me a little bit about yourself, who you are, who you were, before you went into the military, maybe why you went to the military?
Well, as far as I just had graduated from high school. Back then, people think the economy is bad now. It was terrible back in the 70s. Inflation was really through the roof. There was a lot of issues. Jobs were hard to come by. Like any kind of job, most people, there'd be 100 people apply for a job. That would even be, working as a store clerk or something like that. They were hard to find.
Right.
I actually had a decent job, but I just was ready to get out and see some of the world. So I graduated in 78, and I went to work, and I just felt like I didn't want to stay in my hometown. So I explored the military, and I chose the Air Force, and I joined it.
Had you ever been interested in the topics of UFOs, or like, you know, had you just seen it in the news? What was your relationship with the phenomena before entering the military?
Nothing.
Literally nothing.
Okay, this is a different world. Back then, it was fast cars and girls, and alcohol. Fast cars, girls, and alcohol. Okay, that's all it really was. And motorcycles. And I had a fast car, Camaro. I had a motorcycle, and I like girls a lot. So I had all and drank a lot. I shouldn't say drink a lot. I like to drink.
I get it. I get it.
So.
But so yeah, I mean, the internet wasn't a thing. I mean, for anyone who's listening, like a newer audience, you guys got to remember the time period. There's no internet. I mean, how many channels did you have on cable? 3?
I think cable had just started. So I think there was CNN where I live, WGN, and I don't know if there's anything else.
So you're not even really getting, I mean, you're getting the news is really starting to become a 24/7 program, but it's not quite there yet. It's still local. It's still regional.
Well, yeah, most of it's local, including the paper was still very popular back then.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Not just to hide under during a rainstorm, but to actually read. And that's kind of, yeah.
Well, today's phone is yesterday's newspaper. There was a picture one time, everybody was standing on the corner reading the newspaper. Nowadays, they're all standing on the corner reading their phone. So
right. And so, okay, so no, like literally, had you, I mean, so yeah, actually, I won't even go there because you already said it. You were interested in one thing.
Well, I was a young kid. That's what I did. I mean, yeah, I wasn't into the library, scholars, or any of that stuff. It just really wasn't. I played sports.
Yeah. Because I was thinking, like, for myself, like, I went to parties, I drank, but I mean, again, I come from a different time period, and I was always like hanging out with like the existential guys smoking a joint in the corner, like.
It was dope back then, but see, I mean, UFOs weren't that popular back then. In fact, it was a taboo. You didn't really want to talk about it.
Yeah, kind of a career ender, actually.
Not just a career ender, period. People just would look at you like, what, little green men, you know?
Right.
There wasn't even that many books out then, and there wasn't really any TV or anything that really covered it. I mean, there was sci-fi, but, you know, it wasn't a lot into UFOs and stuff, or aliens or whatever you want to say.
It's so, I think that's so interesting to think about, like the time period difference. And I think the UFO community, like the fact that that's even a thing, I mean, we take that for granted every day. And I think it's an interesting dichotomy to think about the way it is now and how far it's come. It really has come so far compared to like when you were a kid. And that's not that long ago. I mean, you're not that old or anything.
No, I'm 65. The incident took place literally 45 years. But yeah, it's a lot's changed.
That's less than a person ago, right?
Yeah.
So
generation. Yeah.
Where were so you joined the military. Where were you stationed? What was your role? And you know, we can go from there.
Okay. Well, when you joined back then, it was 6-week basic. So that was at Lackland. You did the basic.
Right.
The tech school was at Lackland too in San Antonio. So I think that was 6 weeks too, and it was called security police at the time. So, and I went into law enforcement. So you went through the tech school, you graduated. About halfway through your tech school, you got your orders, which I received orders to go to RAF Bentwaters. I had no idea where that was. And I mean, and I really didn't ask to go overseas. When I meant see the world, I just wanted to get out of Wilmington Normal. I didn't necessarily want to go overseas. I was thinking more about getting somewhere in the United States, different, especially where it was warmer in Illinois. So, but I ended up in England. That was my first tour. I was there from 79 to 81. So
that's one way to see the world. That is.
Oh yeah, it was. Hello world. Yeah.
Yeah. How did you now? Can you explain the strategic and the importance of RAF Bentwaters, and doesn't it have it has a sister base, and it's called, it starts with a W, Woodbridge.
It's Woodbridge, right? Yeah. Well, actually, everything happened at Woodbridge. It didn't happen at Bentwaters. It originally got called the Bentwaters event, but it really wasn't at Bentwaters. It happened outside the back gate of Woodbridge, the East Gate. And then they changed it now to the Rendlesham Forest
Right,
Incident, because it happened in Rendlesham Forest. So.
Can you go? Like, if I were to fly in and could I get to? Is the base there still? Is it closed?
Well, Bentwaters is an air park. It was sold, so there's a private owner. They still have they have the gate going onto the flat line. The flat line's still there. The buildings are still there. They actually build a movie studio, so they film there. In fact, I went back there with the Canadian crew, and we filmed on their facilities. Besides going to the forest, so Bentwaters has been sold privately. Woodbridge belongs to the British, and they have an active military helicopter unit on there. So it's still there. And then, yeah, you could get out in the forest. Yeah, it's changed a lot, and they've made a lot of, made things different and stuff. But yeah, you could still go out there. They have a trail out there. They have the craft Pennison described there. Yeah, but it's not where it really happened. It's farther away from where the event really happened.
So it's kind of, for me, that, what that makes me think of? It's like, I don't know if you know Massachusetts at all, but Salem and the witch trials, where the witches memorial is it's like a bunch of headstones, and it has all their names.
Right.
It's like a mile from where they actually were hanged.
It's
just
not
tourists.
quite a mile, but it's probably a quarter mile down. There was a lot of deception done with this case. Colonel Hall did an interview one time where he even said they planted fake sites. They did different things because they were trying to hide exactly where the location is, just like they were trying to hide the dates and times and everything else. Because the deeper you would dig into this case, the more you would find about it and, the things that took place. Just like the memo wasn't factual in dates and times. But the event actually took down right down by Cable Green, which, it's down there towards the corner of the forest where you cross, there's a fence line. And the farmer that owns the fields actually now put a big fence up because he doesn't want people out in his field. It was just a barbed wire fence you could climb over and go into the field. So.
Right. Yeah, I kind of understand that on the farmer's perspective. Like, he probably just like, oh my God, so many people are coming through here. Like,
yeah, it got pretty popular. I don't know how popular it is after COVID. Everything kind of died after COVID for a while.
Literally.
Before COVID, a lot of people would come there and do stuff and film there and everything else. So.
I would love to go there, but that's another thing. So,
well, the honest thing is if you go there, there's a chance you could see something. There's still stuff going on to this day outside in the forest area.
And that's something I definitely want to touch upon in this evening. And maybe I'll just come right out and ask you right in the beginning. I've worked with a lot of I've walked nuclear witnesses into members of Congress's office to brief them on the situation of UAPs or UFOs, as they're most commonly known, and nukes. That, for me, I can draw not too many hard conclusions but I can draw lines to things where there's so much evidence that it goes beyond coincidence, that UFOs are attracted, or at least are surveilling to a degree. Whatever that means, I don't know, because we can't put ourselves in an unidentified or unknown's brain. But there's something with the advent of the nuclear technology that humans, once they split the atom, sightings start to spike. Did Bentwaters have nuclear weapons? The government has denied it, but most people will give you a smirk and say, I can't comment.
Well, this is what I can tell you about the area, okay? First of all, I could tell you the misconception that nukes were not allowed in England is wrong. And the fact of the matter is, the base we were at and all the other bases that were inside of England were NATO bases. So we fell under a NATO charter, under NATO law. So the facilities and bases were allowed to have nuclear weapons on them, okay? So, there's a charter, and I put this on my Facebook page years ago because there were people jumping up and down in the UK and saying they broke the law. No, they did not. The NATO charter to this day allows nuclear weapons in NATO countries. They just don't like to make a big deal about it, because if you go forward from our incident, Green and Common came online with that type of nuclear weapon that they admitted was there. They had all kinds of protests and issues. So they didn't want to broadcast it, but the fact was there were nuclear weapons inside of NATO, in England, under NATO charter.
Okay, maybe we don't have to go further than that for the sake of your freedom, but okay. So, and then I want to ask one more question.
Mm-hmm.
Bentwaters and Woodbridge, their strategic.
Yeah, I could give you the whole rundown of the base, what our mission was. The Cold War was going full board. That was Carter was the president, leaving. Reagan had won. There was a huge buildup after Reagan came in, and he modernized the military, and he made bases bigger. Every base I went to, from Bentwaters all the way through, grew after Reagan became president. There was all kinds of technology being brought online that was being hidden from the Carter administration, because most people don't remember, because you probably don't, MK Ultra was real. And MK Ultra was taken, but I'm just saying, was taking place in the 70s, and all that technology got transferred over to the United Kingdom. They hid it from the American Congress and from the president, and they moved it to Europe. It was all being done right outside the back gate at Woodbridge. Out there, it's called Orford Nest. Orford Nest, most people don't know, is Area 51 for the United Kingdom. It's huge. They developed lasers, nuclear weapons, radar there. Everything that was done exotic-wise, that was advancement of technology, was all done right outside the back gate at Woodbridge. And there was a facility that was a joint American-British at the time, and now it's only British, called Rendlesham Heath. And Marconi was the defense contractor at the time. They were working on SDI right during our event. But most people think SDI didn't even start until after Reagan became president. It was being worked on back in the 70s.
Which would make it would make total sense that, that idea didn't just pop. It sounds like it went public because they needed more funding.
Well, it's no different. Trump just talked about the Golden Dome, which is just an advancement of SDI.
Right.
And that's what they're doing. And it's ironic that SDI was just becoming popular when our event happened.
Crazy.
Now they're going to do the Golden Dome, which ties in to UAP technology. That's so timely right now. Obviously, it is.
Stranger Things, right? Loosely based on the Montauk project, and they're incorporating.
Yeah, Montauk was tied to MK Ultra.
Yeah,
and the equipment, the equipment that came from Montauk went over to the United Kingdom.
And that's how that is very interesting. I don't think I've heard that. So,
well, it's there. A lot of people will scoff at it, but it's there. You just have to do your research, which I did. See, I had skin in the game when I got sick, and I was already trying to figure out what happened to us before that. But when I got sick, I did a deep dive, and I started working with researchers that were looking at all possibilities of what a UAP is, not just the nuts and bolts, UFOs, and biological beings. And before I forget, I want to tell you, I know you worked with Salas, but Arrow was being honest about it. There's something you're not aware of that Salas doesn't like to talk about, but you can go back and research this.
Okay.
One of the things that Salas has said was that we wouldn't have tested our technology on those facilities because we would have ruined it. But he claims that the aliens did something to it and we were able to bring it back online in 3 to 5 days.
Yeah.
That doesn't add up. And I'll tell you why. If you go back and look, have you ever heard of what's called a Marx generator?
Marx generators sounds familiar.
It's tied to Tesla. And that's a generator that was developed back during the Philadelphia experiment. Ooh. And it's Tesla-based technology. And that particular generator was tied directly to Salas's launch site. And the SAGE radar, which was tied directly to the launch site. And the Marx generator will create those UAP effects through frequencies and everything else. And here's the other thing you need to think about. They did not see an alien craft. They saw lights. And they did not see alien beings. The Marx generator is tied to these things. It's tied to the UAP phenomenon. It's tied to frequencies and everything else. and that was all tied directly
Sound like
to his facility and all these other nuclear facilities that had these events that took place across the way. It was all tied in through NORAD and all the radar systems and everything else.
Yeah.
So when Arrow came back and said, which people missed it because they wanted to argue and say the fact that they're lying about that, Arrow was being honest. They were admitting that the government tests technology, this type of technology, on our equipment and facilities, but nobody wanted to listen to that. They just said they were lying about what happened to Salas and his crew.
Because it's a huge part of UFO history. And
Yes, but UFOs, if you go back to what Bigelow's talking about and Green and those guys, they're not talking about nuts and bolts aliens.
No,
They're talking about unidentified aerial phenomenon. Now, they have talked about some biological bodies, but actually a UAP is its own intelligence within itself. And they're actually working on that within all of our advanced technology going forward right now.
Jesus.
In fact, if you go to the movie that just came out, one of the guys, I just briefly saw a clip, he said whoever controls this technology going forward, this is the next Manhattan Project, and whoever controls this technology will control the world for the next 100 years, just like we did with the nuclear.
That was Jay Stratton who said that.
Yeah, and it's true. He's being honest. There's some things they're honest about, but
I'm actually friends. I consider him a friend. I don't know if we did the episode, but Tim Phillips of Arrow, I had him on and I heard him out, and I of course pushed on him, but the way that you just brought those things together in my head, I guess I was being arrogant in the same way that other people have been, that I didn't want to believe, or I didn't want to think about the fact that maybe our government was testing on our own facilities, because that's where you're going to have to test it. If you test it on an enemy, that's called an act of war.
Well, no, it's not even that. You don't want to divulge your hand to the enemy totally.
Yeah.
But it's just like the Nimitz incident was just the same thing. That if you go down and you look at where it happened off of Catalina Island.
Yeah.
Now, it's interesting that Lou Elizondo, if you watch Unidentified, there was one of the episodes where they had him talk about right before they went to commercial break, and he started going into what's off of Catalina Island and what everything that involves Catalina Island and the technology. Then he said, and they acted like they were going to carry it on after the break, and they didn't, because and the incident that happened with the other aircraft carrier off the East Coast was right down by the Florida Peninsula. That is where all stealth technology is developed and worked on. It sits right off of Eglin Air Force Base, and that's where all these same radar facilities and everything else. But they're all down there. So both of the big incidents with both aircraft carrier groups were done in these facility areas where they could test this stuff on our own equipment, because it's the best in the world, the best radars, the best systems, and it isn't convenient that both carrier groups were not armed. So I got into it with Kevin Day. I interviewed him for Phenomena Radio, and he made a comment that he said, well, if the aircraft would have been armed, they would have fired on it. And I said, well, what would have happened? He goes, well, the weapon systems wouldn't have been able to identify this and came back and blew the aircraft up. Because this stuff is all keyed in to heat and sensors, and the weapons would turn around and re-identify our own aircraft. So that's a weapon right then in itself. So you can create these effects, and the EC aircraft the Navy can create these effects, and so can some of our other aircraft. They can create these effects that are with the carrier strike group.
So what you're talking about is now we're good. I mean, this is deep already, right?
Yeah.
So you're talking about essentially having the ability to not just trick the radar, but trick the physical evidence.
Well, see, but Favor and Day weren't honest. And Day eventually got caught and had to admit that we've already have technology that can manipulate radars.
Right.
So they can manipulate what you're seeing on radar and what it's doing.
Absolutely.
What Favor wasn't honest about, and I called him on it, and he admitted they had the helmet, but they claimed he wasn't using it that day. There's a helmet that the F-35 pilots use, and it was the first generation that was the first generation of it that was being used by the F-18 pilots during the Nimitz incident, that you can actually control different parts of the equipment, different stuff in equipment, all through the helmet itself, which is actually you're using your mind to control it. It's multitasking.
What?
Yeah, that's why the F-35 is so so real. It's so classified. The helmet itself. Now, all you have to do is go back. Have you heard of the God's helmet?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was Persinger. That was tied to this whole group. You can manipulate the mind. You can manipulate everything through these helmets, and you can control different parts of the aircraft, weapon systems, and everything else. And all you have to do is go back to an old movie called Firefox, where they talked about that in the movie. It was the Russians had it, and Clint Eastwood was in it, and you can use your mind to control stuff. We have that ability. It's real.
Consciousness based. Now to whatever that means. So you're using you're harnessing your consciousness to
control the weapon systems. Yeah.
Interface with
and these pilots are trained on that through meditation and everything else. Yeah.
So the psionics thing is something that you totally are in on.
No, it's real. It's
so that's what I mean. So
yeah, No, I mean, this isn't made up stuff that I'm, hypothesizing on. This is all the technology. DARPA just came out and said they're within very shortly they're going to be able to create time dilation bubbles for individual soldiers. And they'll be able to create it through a backpack. Again, they admitted to it. And that's what happened to me and the other guy that got compensated from the government. I actually, for sure, went into a time dilation bubble that was being created by our own technology and the real phenomenon that's in the forest at Bentwaters or Woodbridge.
Well, let's circle back for a minute, because you just kind of blew up my whole worldview right there. But it's okay.
And you know what? These are all tied to SAP programs.
That's what I was going to say.
But here's the thing: these Congress people you're meeting with, they're a waste of time. They have no control, no power. Nancy Mace just came out and said, what was it, about a month ago? She said they vote on SAP. They vote on SAP programs. They don't even know what they're voting on. They just get given a number, and will they support $50 billion going to this program? They don't even know what the program is.
She's
all this technology stuff that's going on. Congress has no oversight over it. They have no control. Only the gaining units like CIA and all those, and the contract companies that control the technology and are developing the technology. So this is all a farce, Tyler. You're not going to get disclosure. You're not going to get anything. And the fact that they're doing this hearings to a subcommittee just lays it even deeper. The head of the committee Comer is not even interested in this. He farmed it off to a subcommittee that has no subpoena power. And I was invited to meet with Arrow, come up, meet the Gang of Eight, testify and all this other stuff. And I said, I will not do any of that until you confront the Department of War now and the VA and ask them the status of my records. And no one will touch that. No one will confront the VA or anything and have them clarify
your records.
My records, where they are and what they are. It's
such a big deal that your records are still hidden, and no one. They've asked you to come talk, but yet they will not entertain the idea, or at least muddy themselves by
they can't. But not only that, but I do have proof that Adrian and I got a settlement. We have these documents. It's real. They admitted we were injured during the event. Colonel Hall just did an interview with Russ Colcart and said on the record that Adrian and I were injured during that event. Okay. But here's the issue. That is proof, but the government remains silent.
Yeah.
And until the government will admit to what's going on, which these units won't, it's just like these people. Do you remember? I can't remember the last guy. The most stunning guy in all these testimonies was the guy that came forward that talked in the last hearings and said, I can't talk about most of it unless we go into a skiff. And even then, if we go into a skiff, you're not going to have the clearance to hear what I know.
Yeah.
And that is the fact. These Congress people don't have access to any of these programs. They don't know what's going on. They don't know where the money's going. And if you go back to 9/11, which is a conspiracy-based theory, but these are the facts. Rumsfeld testified on the Hill the day before
2.3 trillion.
No, it was more than that. It was like 8 trillion. They can't account for. And if you go, it's over 20 trillion now, but it was around 8 trillion that they couldn't account for at that point. And if you go back and add up all the budgets prior to when he testified, all that money didn't even equal what he said they couldn't account for. So then all of a sudden 9/11 happens, and the two areas where the data was held was the main was in the Pentagon, where the Pentagon got hit, and Building 7 held the backup files, and they completely dropped everything. And now it's over 20 trillion that they can't account for.
I just did an episode about I was asked to entertain this idea because I'm part of the UFO world that they potentially used directed energy weapons on 9/11. And I'm from Boston, so I mean, New York's 4 hours away. I went through 9/11 in a way that most people didn't. Knew.
What I can tell you is this: when I flew
in the Pentagon, that is fucking crazy. I think that's fucking crazy.
The problem with the Pentagon is there's people that were there that said there was plane wreckage and bodies, but they wouldn't identify the aircraft that hit it. But I can tell you, when I flew on missions after 9/11 with pilots, every one of them to a T would say they didn't want to go into conspiracy. They just said that aircraft couldn't have done what they said it did, nor could there be any pilot that could have. Yeah. And they want you to believe
them. If you were to go on the actual guy that did it, he was demonstrably, noticeably the worst pilot out of all the hijackers. The guy couldn't even fly a little Cessna, and you're telling me that he banked a 280-degree turn and then came street level and just guided perfectly into the building. I mean, come on.
It just didn't. It didn't. A lot of that stuff didn't happen the way it is, and we lost control at that point of our own freedoms because they did the Patriot Act.
Patriot Act, yeah.
But the bottom line is that's the concern right now, that we're going to have something having to do with UFOs that's going to get admitted to, and that will be the next Patriot type of act, type of thing.
Are you saying a false flag?
It could be a combination of both. I mean, 9/11 happened. It just, the circumstances behind it don't all add up. I'm not arguing that things didn't go on.
But we know they'll fake things like the Gulf of Tonkin.
Well, you just think about how it's been over 20 years, how much more advanced they are in technology than they were 20 years ago. I really don't know how totally they did everything. I just know the details behind what they presented to us don't add up.
Have you ever heard of Dr. Judy Wood?
No.
Look into her. She talks about the directed energy weapon thing. And I mean, it's interesting.
There were guys that I talked to that got to the site within the first 24 hours, and they said there was high explosive smell in the air. So it sounded like some of these.
I don't doubt that. I don't doubt that. Like, I don't doubt that some sort of explosive controlled demolition happened, but I don't think that was at the core of it, because the building's dustified. Like, but that's not what we're here to talk about. So
no, I know, and not only that, but here's the final kicker. Everything they've claimed happened to bring the buildings down, they still found passports at the bottom of the rubble that identified who the terrorists were.
Oh, how lucky are we?
That's all I'm getting at. Folks, just all I'm trying to say before we go forward is don't believe everything the government tells you, okay?
Shit, don't even believe more. Don't believe any of it.
I'm trying to be nice, okay?
Yeah, don't believe any of it. Just do your own research.
And also don't believe that the people in Congress actually know what's going on either.
They have
no clue. They have no clue to what's going on.
I don't want to say anything on air. I didn't get to. I won't go to that, but I don't want to bash I'm not bash. I know you're not bashing Congress because they're doing well.
All I'm just saying is I'm not saying they're not interested or they don't want to know and they don't realize they have no oversight. But the bottom line is they're not going to have it. Look at what happened. All you got to do is go back to MK Ultra. When they found it out, they claimed they destroyed all the records and all the technology went bye-bye and they didn't get any access to it.
Which makes no sense.
Which that just tells you that started way back then and it's just gotten worse ever since then, how they hide stuff, keep stuff from Congress and they don't have access to it. How can you vote on a project and give funding to something you don't even know what it is?
because they don't even, they make, and it's so funny, they make these fucking bills 5,000 pages and they have 24 hours to sign it. It's
No,
like,
I know.
no one could read through that.
No, I know. But that, I'm just saying, so I'm not trying to bash individual members of Congress. I'm just saying, we're not going to, I know your show is total disclosure. It ain't going to happen. That's all I'm going to tell you. You're not going to get total disclosure.
I know.
Even when they tell you the truth, which I don't think they were totally lying about the Salas incident, people don't want to, they don't want to even believe it. They don't even consider anything else other than an alien craft showed up outside the missile site, brought it down, fried the systems, but we could bring them back online in 3 days, you know, but we wouldn't do that to ourselves, nor we couldn't brought it back if we did it. That's all I'm just saying. This stuff doesn't add up.
It doesn't add up. You're right. You're right. I know that we're gonna like each other, and I'll there's some things I definitely want to talk to you off air about. But going back to Bentwaters to keep some sort of just linear path, because I love the stuff you're talking about, and I could talk for hours. I do want to get to the Rendlesham because I do want to spur out on that. And I think we could touch on all these things. But talk to me about, I'd like to hear in your words, I've listened to it and of course before, but can you tell me, just bring me to that night that you had your encounter, walk me through what happened, no details too small, and just give me in the audience the not the longest version, but a summation.
I'll give you a condensed version, okay?
Yeah, because I know
the first night, and you can't go off the memo because the memo, when it was written, they didn't have the proper dates and times. We came on duty. It was our last midnight shift. It was Christmas night, going into Boxing Day in the UK. It was 2300. We came on duty, and the event happened at 0300 in the morning. And how it all started was myself and the law enforcement supervisor, staff sergeant, who was my supervisor directly new to the base. We got together and we were riding around. It was a slow night. And we would drive around the base, and we also went down to the East Gate, and we had to check it to make sure it was secure. As we were going down to the East Gate together talking, he saw something in the sky go into the forest. I didn't see it go into the forest, but he got my attention. I saw it into the forest. So from that point, went off base to see if we could figure out what was going on. It wasn't a direct threat to the base, but it was right outside the base in the forest, right down to the end of the road. When we got down to the end of the road, it didn't feel right. We were off base. We got back up, called it in. They called the security soup down, which was Peniston. He came down and saw the same thing we did in the forest. So they did some stuff behind the scenes, called radars, got confirmation there was something on radar over the area, disappeared. So the decision was made to send Peniston, his rider, and myself into the forest to figure out what it could be. They called the local authorities, both the British police and the fire department, but we were out in the middle of nowhere. So it was going to take them a while to get there. So that was another reason why we went back. And if we'd have come across something, our own fire department could have responded quicker than they could have. So we went into the forest. We played cat and mouse with it for a while. At some point, they lost radio contact with us. Our radios weren't working right. We got close to something. And when we finally did, we came up into a clearing over a berm, and all three of us saw it. We dropped to the ground. Everything changes from that moment on what our recollections are. I remember getting close to it. Everything dimmed down and it got bright again. It went up into the sky and went back into the forest. The other guy that was the brand new airman, first night on flight, did an interview with James Fox and said, when we got close to it, I was armed, which I don't remember being armed. I don't think I was. I drew my weapon and it zapped us and we all passed out and we woke up and it was gone. Peniston goes into the details of where he got up, walked around it, touched it, wrote stuff in his notebook, took pictures and all this other stuff, touched the craft, called it a triangular craft, and then had a binary download. So that's the basic discussion of the three of us, all different synopsis of what happened the first night. It did go out. We all agree that, I think two of us do for sure. I don't remember if Ed did say that or not, that it did go out into actually he did because he wrote in his statement it did. It went into the field and into another field, and we followed it for a while, and then we lost it. When we all came back, our watches were 45 minutes slow, and they said they lost us for over 45 minutes radio traffic.
What?
So that's the synopsis of the first night. Then we went back to the base, turned in, got a briefing, went out to the site, found some evidence of some pictures and from a triangular object in the forest, damage to the trees, and all that. So that was night one. Night two was the flight that took over midnight shift had an incident. I wasn't there. What I was told right after it happened was they saw lights. The shift commander, Bentwaters, was going over to Woodbridge, had an encounter with some lights, shut her vehicle down. She freaked out, and she ended up getting relieved of duty, and she left the base.
Wow.
So that was night two. And Phenomena Radio, we interviewed all the people who were involved in night two. And they saw things and a bunch of stuff went on. Night three was the halt night, where you can find the memo where he talked about it.
And the recording.
And the recording, which is stunning if you listen to it.
Yeah. What do you make? Like, does it line up with what you experienced in the sense of like how he's talking, the tone he has, and then as it's coming toward him, the fright?
Well, I wasn't actually there for that.
No,
part.
I know, no,
yeah.
but
that was
that
was what was going on, and he's always been honest about his experience. Where he's been flaky is who was there. He denied Adrian and I weren't there even at first, and then finally we proved that we were.
Wait, he said that you weren't?
Yeah, at the very beginning, he claimed neither one of us were even involved in the third night. But we were able to provide evidence through the tape and other stuff. So he's finally not only admitted that we were there, but we were injured by it.
Can't you be heard on the tape?
Yeah, but that tape wasn't very cleaned up. Georgina Bruni got the tape and had it cleaned up, and that's when you could hear it. That's when his story started to fall apart with Adrian and I weren't involved.
Maybe I'm going to create a marker here. So the people that are listening in the future, I might insert a clip of that audio recording. Or just
you can say we have Airman Burroughs and 2 other personnel at our location. They want a rendezvous. And they said, not at this point, we'll let them know.
I remember.
But that was not the original tape that was released was not very clear. Right. And it was only after they cleaned it up and listened to it. That was the beginning of him falling apart. And the Bastinza was on the tape. So he was trying to cover up what happened to Adrian and I. Okay.
Because that is if you strip everything away from the rest of what happened, the real problem for the U.S. military and the U.S. government was going to be the fact that you got zapped by this thing. Like there was physical interaction where you were somewhat harmed and had missing time. There was physical engagement to a level that the military, even from on the site, knew this was going to be a fucking problem.
I don't know if it was the military or if it was the government contract, Marconi and those guys, because Green was involved in it. Kit Green was involved in this back then. He was involved in our incident. So was Nick Pope's father.
Works guy?
No, Kit Green's the CIA guy that was.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, but he's the one that helped get my settlement. He's actually a doctor that is done a lot of. He's actually treated and evaluated people that were injured by UAPs.
Right.
So he was involved in that incident. And so Nick Pope's father was too, which most people aren't aware of. It's going to be in my new book. Jeffrey Pope was in charge of all the technology for the United Kingdom. He was the head scientist for all this technology that was going on during that time frame. Yeah, he was. It's going to come out in the new book called
what does Nick
Project.
Think about this?
Well, he poo-poos around it just like he does everything else.
Yeah.
He says, I can tell you what my dad did that's been declassified. I can't tell you what he did that's still classified. He did get an award for certain things, blah, blah, blah. But I can't talk about things that are still classified. Oh, so he does this typical Nick Pope.
He's the company man.
Well, no. Nick Pope, no, I don't want to go there.
I know. But
so anyway,
on a deeper level, I agree. I agree.
The very people put off and Green and were involved in this stuff way back in 1980. In fact, Al Putoff was involved with Project Stargate. He worked for SRI. SRI was involved in this incident, including Marconi Company and everything else. So it's a big interwoven mess.
after night 3.
Well, I'll finish night 3 real fast. So when we met with Hall, I met up with Hall, and then there was what he was seeing in the sky. He pointed to stuff flying around in the sky still, and there was some lights coming down from them. But then this light appeared in the distance and started coming towards us. And he asked me if that was the same thing that we saw the first night. I said, I can't tell. Can I get closer? And he let me and Adrian go forward. And then when we went forward, we got close to it, and Adrian got knocked to the ground as we were approaching it. And then he saw me go into it, and I completely disappeared for a while, and then I reappeared.
What the? So he testified that you vanished.
Yeah, I vanished for a while. Yes. Yeah.
Do you recollect that?
No, none of that. Both nights I got close to it. I don't remember what happened, but that's the interesting part about all this. It's called a time dilation bubble, which they can create it, but it involves what a UAP is. So
what you're saying is that this to some degree, this craft had, whether it be by proximity or by design, it took you somewhere.
Yeah, if you understand time dilation, you actually go into a different dimension. You actually either slow down or speed up. You go somewhere else. And so that's part of the interest they've had in me, these agencies and stuff. When I had my surgery, they got my tissue, the damage to the heart and everything, was the fact that somehow I was able to survive interacting with the time dilation bubble, whether it was a real UAP or effect we created. Because at the time, there's a guy who wrote a book by Andrew Pike that talked about this. He was down there studying UAPs, and his studies through the university he was working with through the government funding got interwoven into the Bentwaters or Rendlesham Forest Incident. Okay. So they were looking at what a UAP is down there. And not only that, our government was studying it. And actually, he admitted they were provoking the UAPs. They were trying to understand it and learn it and how to utilize it.
So, and other people have talked about this, like Jay Stratton has talked about how they wanted to use nuclear material to pretty much bait UAP so that they could study them. And this was a tactic that they proposed several times. But so with saying that,
he's not being honest. It's not it's not nuclear material, it's radars. If you go back and when you look at when Roswell happened, are you aware of what happened?
Yes. So
they set up that triangle radar system down there because they moved it from the East Coast. The big things that have gone on, including the Foo Fighters that took place in World War II, that all has to do with frequencies and radars and everything else. It's not the fact that detonating a nuclear bomb didn't do something because it created the EMP effect, but it's more the radar systems and everything else that play into what a UAP is.
Okay.
Again, I'm not getting into the nuts and bolts UFOs that people believe exist or biological beings. I'm talking about what this group's talking about, UAPs and stuff. I'm not trying to discuss what a nuts and bolts UFO is.
So just to clear this up, Jim Peniston, most other people, or not most, because I don't want to say that, but there's this thing in the community where when Rendlesham is retold, in these documentaries and in these other books, they frame it as this thing was a craft from another world.
No, he's not. No. That's not true. It's his belief is it's us from the future. It's
right.
Yeah, it's not from another world. It's not alien. I don't particularly like some of the things he's done or how he's hurt the incident. My personal opinion, but I'm not going to let that. He believes it was a craft of unknown origin, but it came from the future and it came back to that time frame of our event. And he doesn't believe in aliens. He believes in time travel. Which ties into all this, what a UAP is and all that other stuff. But and even Bigelow, if you follow what he said they're here, but he didn't say they were aliens. He just said they're here, and it could very well be something from the future coming back. I can't say that's wrong completely.
It would make sense that maybe something in our future their past happens and it starts thinning out the herd, and they're coming back for genetic material. And I mean, that's totally plausible. I think it's
I
just as
don't
plausible as
think they're
everything
really
else.
coming back for genetic materials. What they're doing is whatever in the future screwed up, they're trying to come back and keep that from happening. But every time, according to the people involved, the scientists, just because you change one thing doesn't mean that doesn't change something else.
Yeah,
It could
it's a
screw the
branch.
timeline up even worse than it was, when you tried to take something out that happened in the first place. So yeah,
time being a fickle character. Like it seems to when you poke and prod, it pokes back.
right. Now,
So
you've seen the stuff that's come out recently where this contractor talked about the Tic Tac, where they worked on this object that could use this frequencies and stuff.
correct.
Well, think about that as a system. If you have something, do that to your radars, fly in front of you, you label it as a threat, you fire at it. The first thing you do is the weapon can come back and destroy your own craft. But the other thing is once you learn how to make that work, every aircraft you have, it's like cloaking in Star Trek. It's no longer visible. It's somewhere else. So even if you fired on it in a cloak, you'd miss because it's either going slower or faster. So, and including when they talk about interstellar travel, I don't know if you're aware of this, you were up in DC, but you're aware how Puthoff's paper got submitted as evidence on interstellar travel. I saw that paper before it got declassified. I visited Puthoff's facility and I saw all the DIRTS papers. I knew all about it. I didn't know they were classified, but I saw them. And what's interesting, if you know the backstory of McCain was involved in my settlement. And then and he knew a lot of what was going on with me and the cover up, and the Department of Justice was involved. So when the 2017 article came out, he wanted to know what was really going on because he knew the wool was being pulled over their eyes, even him and his own committee. So that's when they came forward. But their goal wasn't to really let them know everything, just enough to get some funding to advance these papers and this technology that they're working on.
Right. And
then unfortunately he got cancer and he died. But
yeah, unfortunately, yeah, that really sucks. And it seems to be not a theme, but seems to be something that, like, we're always racing the Undertaker in the UFO community. And people have been met with untimely deaths and deaths through weird circumstance. And okay, so after the third night, now, so this is December, it's cold, it's right around now. We're actually right around the anniversary.
Yeah, December 25th will be 25 years.
That's crazy. So after the third night, what happens? Do you guys what happens on an official basis? Because I've heard things about like sodium pentothal.
Well, okay, I can kind of lay it out. Okay, what I remember was we went home after night one. It was and we were told when we came back we'd have to write a statement. So I was back out there on night three. When I came back to work on Monday, they posted me on a gate. A team from Langley came into the forest. Now, what's interesting about the event, which has kind of gotten lost in the thing, they were working on technology to bring satellites down. And most likely a Russian satellite got brought down during this event. So they used the cover of an Apollo spacecraft, damaged the end of the runway, and it was involved in the whole thing. But in reality, what people have to understand is the lighthouse actually played a part in this. If you go back to the history of the area, they developed radar, and the original radar system was tied into the lighthouse, and the lighthouse was being utilized to beam frequencies into the forest, which was creating an effect that we walked into. The big question is whether or not we were deliberately brought into it. I don't think night one, but by night three, it's possible that they wanted to test us on us, and that's why a bunch of stuff took place. But ultimately, a team came in, they recovered the satellite. There was an investigation taking place. Now go back to the arrow. What was the thing they said? They used to like to go down and spread the word aliens landed.
They would say
the very beginning, right after on December 31st, a person from the base went downtown to the group that was Bufa or something, not like MUFON here, that were involved in UFOs and told everybody an alien landed at Bentwaters. So they started asking questions, and that was a big deal. They wrote a book about it. But eventually, a group in the United States, Barry Greenwald, and I think his name was Barry Greenwald, and Fawcett was his name. They did a FOIA, and they got the HALT memo released.
Right.
And when the memo released, now the government was in a bind because they had to try to explain what went on. And not only did it cause issues with the UFO community, but CNN got in the middle of it. And that really stirred the problem. And then the News of the World broke the story, and it was off to the races, playing hide and seek with the media the rest of my life, with what I could say, what I couldn't say. I ended up being forced to talk with CNN, but I didn't go on the record for the special assignments report. You can see it online because they were very adamant that I couldn't deny the event took place, but they didn't want me to talk much about the event. And so I just kind of said, I just told the reporter, Chuck DeCaro, look, this took place, some took place, the memo's wrong, but it took place, but I'm not going to talk about it. And he was pretty cool about it. And Adrian was the same way. Both him and I never went on the original report, nor did Halt, nor did Peniston, and a lot of the main people that were involved in the 3 nights. But so it's just been a mess ever since. But for me, when I got sick is when I started digging into this. And that's when I discovered all this stuff about what was going on outside the gate, the technology, how it plays into all this. I met Hal Puthoff, Christopher Green, Eric Davis, Gary Nolan, Colin Kelleher. I was around all these people. They wanted my DNA. They wanted to study my brain, all this other stuff. And I started putting all this stuff together.
Wait. They wanted your blood?
They wanted my DNA. Yeah, they actually, Green came after we did the citizens hearing. We testified, right? Now, if you go back and it was the Bassett hearing.
Yeah, the Bassett 2000.
Well, if you go back, what's interesting in the hearing, and I'm not trying to brag, but it's a fact. Our testimony, the 2-part testimony we did was the biggest deal for the whole hearing, because the people from Congress weren't even aware, most of them, about the classified records section or all this stuff. There were 2 people that did. The guy, and I can't remember his name, he's an older guy, he was a congressman. His district was Langley. So he knew exactly what was going on. Including one of his staffers still worked for him, came down and talked to me and helped Cheryl get some of the stuff done through the classified section.
For anyone who doesn't know, Cheryl is John McCain's assistant.
Cheryl Bennett, yes.
Who helped you get VA.
Yes, she was the driving force behind my settlement, right?
Correct.
So, but the other guy, I don't know if you know what was known, his last name was Gravel. And he was the senator that read the MK Ultra papers on the floor of the Senate.
Right.
He was involved in all the stuff involved. And so he started asking us questions, and everybody that was up there on the committee freaked out. He goes, oh, you can tell us what you really know. And they're like, no, you can't. You cannot talk about this. Do not talk about this. You don't have immunity, blah, 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 blah. So he suspected some of this himself, what was going on. So that helped bring in Christopher Green, who came down and met with my attorney, Pat Frasconia, who then came out and evaluated me. And he flew Gary Nolan into Vegas, met with Colin Keller, and they tried to come down and meet with me in Flagstaff, Arizona to get my DNA, and I refused. So I refused to do that, but they got my DNA when they did the heart surgery. Not only did they get my DNA, but they got my tissue too when they did the heart surgery to replace the valve.
I mean, yeah, do you think that it's possible that someone manipulated the fact that you needed this care and only in order to get?
No, I was sick. I was dying. The DOD handled.
They just exploited the fact that you.
Here's the best guess I can make based on everything that's gone on. This technology's existed for a long time, but it's been so classified. Because if you go back and look, after I got my settlement, Green went public on about top secret and laid out a bunch of stuff about why my stuff was classified, what was the involvement, and all that other stuff. These guys were hidden in the shadows, and they were getting crumbs to continue developing the technology, but I think they were getting cut off. One of the people I know inside government said every year there's a battle with the defense funding on exotic technology over what works, for sure. Bullets, bombs, everything else.
Naturally.
Right. Well, and also they weren't at the cuspus to be able to make this stuff work right. They were working on it. They were trying to get it to work. Like to make some of this work, you had to have these huge facilities, these huge energy draws. Like most people don't realize, sizable
infrastructure.
Well, the Rendlesham incident was tied to the sizable nuclear plant that was just down the coast. That all that energy was brought into the facilities that were there outside the back gate that were driving this testing and everything else. Well, they've made advancements in quantum technology and energy. And so now it's ready to come off the drawing board and be utilized.
Right.
So they're trying to get their skin in the game, to, even though they're older. They're all in their 80s, except for Davis is a little bit younger. They're trying to get their skin in their game. Yeah, Nolan's younger too. But the DNA stuff, it ties into something totally different that's scary. They're kind of implying that there are people here that were seeded here through bloodlines that aren't necessarily what the regular general population is.
So you think that you have some sort of genetic marker or...
Well, I can say that that's what they're implying.
Yeah.
And I have a report that implies that, but how do you verify it?
Yeah, right.
A lot of this stuff that's why I refuse to cooperate with them, because they said there was only one lab in the world that could do it too. Technically, there was another one in Europe, but the main one was Stanford lab, which was Nolan. How do you fact check any of this? How do you peer review it?
Yeah.
That's a dangerous road to go down.
It is a dangerous road to go down. And I mean, so you did not want to play ball with that. And I think that's fair.
But they got it anyway. And then Green came and visited me in Illinois. And once I knew he had it anyway, I just agreed. I wanted my own genetics tested and to help my son because I was adopted. And then that was another game they played. They went ahead and I agreed to go on the test, but this time they didn't want my blood. They just wanted saliva. So that just reconfirmed that they already had my blood through the VA, through the VA and Department of War, because there was a Department of War doctor involved in the whole thing besides the surgeon. But going forward, he got my saliva, did a test, and he called me back through Nolan and said that my son and I are two of the most unique people in the world, because I'm only in one database, that my DNA is only one database, which would go back to probably when they got it from the surgery. And my son's DNA doesn't exist anywhere. Wow. So that was all the stuff that they said took place. They sent me the reports. It does say that, but how do you verify it?
Okay. That's fair. But they're at least saying it. And so,
well, that's not just my son and I. They believe there's other people out there. What they haven't been clear about, at least that I'm aware of, is they've been back and forth. Are the people that have these experiences already connected to a bloodline from ancient times, or were they affected by the interaction with the phenomenon, and that altered
changed you?
Yeah, that changed us.
Right. Is it something that you were innately born with, or something that happened because of? And maybe that is what they're trying to figure out.
I don't know what they're doing, because that's, again, they're no different than, they say they want disclosure, but they won't be open and completely open on what they're doing and who's funding it or what they're doing and what they've learned either. So, well,
yeah, I get. So I kind of had like a respect for Gary Nolan, because, he was, I mean, you look at his CV and like, you look at some of these guys' history, right? Hal Puthoff, Eric Davis, but they're all playing both sides. They're playing.
Oh yeah, they are. They're playing both sides. So's Lou Elizondo. I don't know. You're young, but do you remember the first wave of this was in the 70s and 80s? And the guy that was a Lou Elizondo of the time was Richard Doty. Lou Elizondo just replaced Richard Doty. They were both counter intel. Doty was for OSI.
OSI, yeah.
And he ran this whole counter intel. You never can make heads or tails of what was really real and what wasn't. And Elizondo's done the same thing. You don't really know, because he goes back and forth. 1 minute he talks about it being one way, then he talks about being aliens and craft. And Grish is the same way. I had numerous conversations with him, And none of these guys are legit when it comes to being honest about what their goal is. They're not about disclosure. And I'll debate them tooth and nail. I'll go head to head with any of them. They know, first of all, they know disclosure is not going to happen because what their involvement in government and the programs that they're aware of and going on, they know darn well this will never become public. Okay, just for example, you know what the F-35 is, right? But yes. Do you know how it operates? No. Do you know how it works?
No.
The best you're going to get is what Bigelow said way back to George Knapp when he started this whole crusade was you'll get confirmation something's going on, but you're not going to get disclosure. He was open and honest about that way back when this all started after he got the money from Reed and they worked on all this. And that's what we have. We have confirmation. There's no doubt the government's hiding secrets from us. There's no doubt it could be some kind of life form that's either here, you know, it's been here or visited us here, it's here or there. We've learned some of our advancements in technology from it.
It's interdimensional. It's this.
It could be, yeah. But that's what I mean with Lou and those guys. 1 minute it's interdimensional, 1 minute it's this, 1 minute it's that, and stuff. And they won't even be honest. How can you believe any of this stuff is my point.
Well, I mean, that brings up a good point, right? Or at least a good question, barrier is, don't you think that maybe the government, maybe the military, for all they do know, that they may have some of the same questions that we have still? Like, do I think that humans are working in underground bunkers with aliens? I really don't. Like, I'll entertain it. I'll talk to people. I'll hear the stories, but do I really think that that's happening? I don't know. That it's something that I think my worldview, or at least my right brain, it logically says like something doesn't feel right. Like it doesn't feel right with this. But again, I don't know everything. I've never been in the military. I've never held a clearance. I've seen things that I can't explain. I know they exist, but do I know that the government knows exactly what's going on? I don't have faith in them to get my taxes right, let alone know what the fuck a UFO really is.
Right, but the thing is that does the general government know? Does general science, does the white science world know? No. Does the dark science know? You can't be developing weapon systems off of this technology if you don't have a pretty good understanding of it.
And it is kind of crazy that most of modern, like if you look at modern disclosure, post 2017 disclosure specifically, what we have right now has all been framed in this kind of like threat narrative. And it's,
well, that was part of my problem I had with Lou. He's backed off some now, but he came on as a threat. Well, you have to create a threat to get funding. The people have to feel fear to justify. That's what they do all the time.
You don't get funding for butterflies.
Yeah, we almost have a $1 trillion defense budget, and you know, and they just can't get enough of the piece of the pie to go forward with their technology. But the point being is you have to create a fear. So if you go back to what von Braun said, and a lot of this goes back to Germany,
to paperclip.
It goes back to the scientists and what they learned, what they were working on. And they brought a lot of these scientists to our country. And that's how our technology started to evolve. In fact, I've had people approach me that they were in government. I don't know. They haven't been able to prove to me what they claim, but they claim the Nazis are still in this. There's a group of people that are still working from inside the original Nazi bloodline, that they're still working on this. But
well, we know there was, I mean, this is something else that people don't want to think about, let alone tack on to the UFO topic, because it's such a dirty thing. But the United States was people in the United States, specifically the banking systems, like JP Morgan Chase, they helped fund the rise of the Nazi Party.
Well, the Bush family was involved in it. There were
Yeah.
some prominent families.
Prescott Bush was involved. So, and there was tons of Nazi sympathizers in the United States.
Well, actually, I don't believe they were sympathizers. I'll be honest with you. All the stuff I've looked at, Eisenhower warned us before he left office.
Of course.
This was all put together. Have you heard of a project called Iron Mountain?
No.
You have to go read about it. It was done in the 70s. It was this group of scientists got together in this facility called Iron Mountain, and they looked at how to control people and technology and everything.
But it sounds like MK Ultra.
They put the book out, and then Johnson, the president, they found out about it, and they turned around and he said, you have to pull it. Well, it was already out, too far gone, so that these scientists came back and said it was fiction. But it wasn't. And if you just go from Iron Mountain and what they said, that's how we've evolved control. It's all about control, and part of control is fear and military. And when you tie so much money up into the military complex, imagine what the world would be like if it took 50% of the world budget to kill each other and did it to make things better. But according to what these people felt was, we would never be satisfied, so we would self-destruct, be having things too well.
Yeah.
We wouldn't be satisfied. We just keep wanting more.
Yeah.
And so they had to come with the balance of keeping people off their feet, off the balance, and how to control them. So that is exactly, and people don't have to agree with this, but it's true. You just have to really go look. A small group of people control the world.
Yeah. That's why I do believe in, Daniel Inouye, who was part of the Gang of Eight that did give the money to, or was working with Harry Reid to get that money put aside for OSAP, which, then conveniently went to Harry Reid's buddy from Las Vegas, Robert Bigelow. He says he had the best bid. And, whatever, we do things for our friends, and we do things for our constituency. So, whatever, it is what it is. But we look at the topic of UFOs, and again, you talk to anybody on the street, you walk up to anybody and say, "What is a UFO?" and they're gonna immediately think, small gray, big eyes, big head, like alien. The archetypal alien. And I think that is a huge issue that we are going to face going forward, when in fact, the U has always been and stood for unidentified. Now, what the government knows, what the government understands, and what they're hiding from us, well, right now, until they can come out and tell me, or until I can get evidence of it, that I can't operate with any.
There is evidence, though. The problem is people don't want to accept it. Like Project Condign lays out a lot of what UAPs are and why the government wants to study them and everything. It was a declassified report the British government did. It got released in 2006. That was part of my evidence presented for my settlement case. And in Project Condign, it admits that the people who were involved in Rendlesham were exposed to UAP radiation. Okay, so Project Condign is a roadmap to what a UAP is. The gray area is, what is the difference between a UAP and a UFO? Now, if you go back to a book called Mirage Man, in a documentary they did, Green and those guys were in it. And the guy Pilkington that did it
as well, of course,
said he didn't believe in any of this till he met this group. And then he believes there's something to it and it's being hidden. But Green said, he was quoted in this book, and I'm paraphrasing, but he said, what we've been told and what's real is different. And once the American public and the world understands the difference, they won't be as terrified by it as when they started with War of the Worlds going forward. We have been conditioned to believe what aliens and craft are and everything else for generations, and that's not really what we're dealing with. Before Edgar Mitchell died, I got to meet him personally and talk to him a couple of times. He told me Condine's real, and what they talk about in Condign is what we're dealing with.
Edgar Mitchell was
the astronaut, the
Apollo astronaut, but
yeah.
What number was he on the moon?
I don't remember.
I think he was like,
I want to say 11, but I don't remember.
Yeah, we're right in the same ballpark. So, but Edgar Mitchell is really he's such an interesting character. So what do you, given your research and given what happened to you, you got sick. You
Yeah.
got, can you talk to me about, talk to me about what happened to you physically that.
Well, right after the event, I didn't feel good, but there was nothing directly related to it. I even had a little vision problems. When I came back from England, I got sick in the summertime. I don't think it was really related to the incident. I just got sick, but I was away from the base. I couldn't travel back, so I had to go to the emergency room to get checked out so that they knew I was sick. When I went to the emergency room, they found a heart murmur. The emergency room doctor, wanted to know what the military thought about my heart murmur. I said, I don't have one. He goes, well, yeah, you do. So from that point, it went forward with that. That's when I went back to the base, and they brought a doctor in for Wright-Patterson. He evaluated me, sent me to Wright. Yeah, at the time I didn't know any of this, so you have to understand. Okay, so then he came in, evaluated me, sent me to Wright-Pat, and they did a bunch of tests on me. So he came back and told me that he thought it was one thing and was going to have to do surgery right away, but it wasn't. They would continue to monitor me, and that's how it ended. And all that's in my records, including all the testing they did on my heart and everything. And that's what my civilian doctor wanted when I got sick, and that's what's classified. The other issue that's classified is my eyes. Started having vision problems, ended up at Wolford Hall at Lackland, and they evaluated me. The first thing the specialist said was, have you been exposed to radiation before? I'm like, not that I'm aware of, but because I didn't know what could have happened to us there and stuff. I actually had orders for Korea, and he tried to keep me from going to Korea because they couldn't treat the issues I was having, which ended up, I found out later, was related to my heart too. And they sent me anyway. The DOD made me go to England. And you didn't know about this till I'll go to Korea. I didn't know about this till later, but this is right when everything broke with the news of the world and all the stories came out. They were chasing us. So I was at Osan. Halt got moved to Kunsan, and the PACAF commander was Gordon Williams. So they hid the three of us over there in PACAF because it was hard for the press to get over there.
Did they ever like, is there any truth to the idea that you guys got called into the office and hit with sodium
well, that's what Penniston says, that he was actually under hypnosis. It comes out that he was interrogated and he had sodium pentothal was used on him. I don't remember that happening. A lot of people claim I was called in and interrogated. I don't remember. I don't remember. It doesn't mean it didn't happen. But
what was the base's official reaction to the events immediately after? Was it like
I don't know, because that was the backstory. I lived off base, so I wasn't in the dorm. The dorm was crazy about it. I guess they went into the dorms. They were searching for some pictures that were supposedly taken. A bunch of stuff went on the base itself in the dorms. I live downtown, so I really wasn't privy to any of that stuff that went on the base.
You just said pictures. Do you think there is actual video out there or pictures of
there was pictures taken. Now the question is, they all supposedly came back fogged. That doesn't mean they did. I mean,
when you were
clearly pictures taken of it with 35 millimeter cameras.
And the base would obviously have some sort of, if there was cameras at all, I mean, this base would have them for security, right?
Well, it was all done through, everything was done through the photo lab. So yeah, the base would have had access to the pictures.
I wonder.
Well, that was part of what has been claimed. General Gabriel, who was the commander of Europe, came in right afterwards, took the reports, took the blotters. There was audio, because besides the whole tape, every radio transmission that took place was recorded at the command post, and that was held for a month. All that was taken. So everything that went on during that event, all the radio transmission and all that was taken and classified.
Taken by higher ups in the
Well, it was taken by Gabriel.
Yeah.
He came in and got a briefing on it, and then took all the evidence with him.
And did he ever want to speak? Did he ever want to speak to you guys?
We never, that I'm aware of. The interrogation was done by the people involved that remembered, said it was OSI, but not on our base. It was outside OSI, most likely DIA, CIA, and the Navy was involved.
What people kind of call the Men in Black, right? That's
Yeah, I
OSI.
mean, the Men in Black, yeah, it's an investigative group that comes in and looks at this stuff. Right.
And they just probably I mean, Arrow did it. They after you testify, they kindly, like, I had Tim Phillips to kind of say this to me, and he's like, you know, we hear the testimony, and then we kindly remind them of their oaths and their.
Yeah, but that was one of the reasons why I wouldn't go up there. There was a contractor that was working for Rubio. He wasn't actually an aide. He was a contractor that contacted me and my attorney, and they didn't want my attorney to come up. They wanted me to come up. He was going to take me personally to the Aero Committee and take me to the Gang of Eight. But the stipulation, no attorney was going to be allowed. He was going to represent me, and I had to sign a non-disclosure.
That's odd.
Well, they didn't want me to talk about what we talked about.
Right.
And I was supposed to get to meet Javi Loeb, and they also promised me, Grish did, that I would get to go to a classified briefing at NORAD about all of this taking place. And I refused to go. They were shocked that I wouldn't go up there. And I've got, for people who say I'm making it up, I don't. There was an article written by Toby Martinez through the Roswell Daily. I provided him all the emails, the evidence, and he wrote the article on it. And I still all of the emails, interactions I had with these different people and agencies that they wanted me up there. Again, two reasons. Number one, I'm not signing an NDA. And number two, I am not going to go up there unless they get the VA, Department of Defense, to admit exactly what they know about the case and me.
So you have, and yeah, so it's exactly, you have stipulations, and
yeah, because it's just, again, it's a good story that I could testify, and I've got some evidence. I've got more evidence than most. I've got the settlement, yeah, but the government has never. Billy Cox was a reporter that actually followed up on it, and the response was from the DO or the VA was the same they just gave to those guys from Area 51 that are suing the government for injuries. Each individual case is identified, is always identified separately. Whatever takes place will not be released or talked about by the government, other than they say that if you get any kind of compensation or treatment, then it has to be tied directly to an event that took place during, what happened to you was involving the government itself, whether it was on active duty or if you were working as a contractor and everything else. So you can't get a settlement unless you can prove you were injured in the line of duty, exactly. Which we were. And our settlement was directly to the Rendlesham Forest event.
And that's what I mean. So by the definition of, like, even some of these debunkers, the Rendlesham case has everything from physical evidence to
well, you have you have the memo, you have the tape, you have the fact the government admitted it took place. You have two individuals that were working the incident and were injured by it. So it's a verifiable, viable incident.
Exactly.
But the problem is you still don't have an answer. My settlement, they accepted it, but they didn't say why they accepted it other than the evidence presented. And they didn't say what injured me. Nor will any of the doctors that I ever deal with that treat me, they will never tell me what they know or what's going on. And it's only a limited amount of doctors that can deal with my heart and my eyes.
Of course, it would be a specialist. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so in your experience, I want to go back to one more thing.
Okay.
Before you get zapped the first time, and again, sounds kind of similar to like a Travis Walton scenario, but I'm obviously just drawing, painting a picture for the audience that's listening. But before you get struck and then, lights out, do you remember any smells? What shape did you see? What colors?
The lighting, the third night was it was an orangish kind of rustic color. It was a big like glob of light, which at the time, like, I understand why people that have incidents say that it could be us, because both night 1 and 3 We walked out of there. We couldn't explain it. And where else could it be? That maybe something from somewhere else. But once I dug into it, I could see how we could have been involved or created that effect or been part of that effect. But the point being is, what I saw both nights were lights. Peniston, and a phenomenon effect, including, there was like a frequency effect. My hair, my back of my head stood up, but I don't remember any smell and anything else other than the other thing I remember. At some point, it felt like time was slowing down, like you were not moving. Things didn't seem right with what we were in. So those were the main effects that I remember both nights.
Sorry, I was muted. So, no, you said the hair's kind of raised. No ozone smell that you can remember?
No, I don't remember ozone smell. No.
Okay, well, that's, and again, so again,
I think others might have,
light.
I think some other people may have. Some other people remember different things and stuff, but this is what I remember. So.
And you said you don't recall, like, is there any memory of whether it was through regression? Even though I'm not a huge fan of regression, I do think some memories can be implanted, or at least maybe exaggerated to a degree.
Mm-hmm.
But is there anything that you remember from the time that you get hit to when you come to?
No, I did go into regression in '88. I just gotten out of active and was in the reserves, and they were doing a show called UFO Cover Up Live. So they had approached me to go on the show. I got flown out to LA. I met with the executive producer. His name was Kurt Brubaker. Forget the guy that was the producer for the show, but ended up working with Brubaker, and Brubaker actually convinced me not to go on UFO Cover Up Live. Oh. It was after I met with him and talked about everything. And he had a company called Brubaker Group. Brubaker was tied originally to the Learjet, John Lear. And then he worked for GM, and he worked with Kit Green. I didn't know that at the time, but later I found out. So he was a technical guy. He was looking at this from a technical standpoint. So he talked me out of it. One of the things that we did do is I did regression in 1988. There's a clip of it online on YouTube. It's a 10-minute clip. And it just shows a little bit about what came out of the regression. But what did come out was we never got to the point where what happened when I went in it, but we got into what it could be. And actually in my regression, it told me that it would be back for me at some point.
What?
Yeah. It would come back for me. It said that. And what was weird was, and again, I can't prove this part of it, so it's kind of in the book Veritas Obscura, but I had different people from different agencies approach me in different ways. I did another hypnosis through Stanford and somebody else and through the intelligence agencies. And the interesting thing was they believed, according to what they told me, was I could communicate with the phenomenon. In my original hypnosis, I was actually communicating real time with the phenomenon.
That's an interesting thought, right?
That's what they claim. It is very interesting. I haven't ever showed it other than a 10-minute clip. And I've always said, if people thought the binary code blew the case up, if they saw this hypnosis tape from beginning to end, it would completely go kaboom. And remember, this was done in '88. This was done way before all the modern stuff that's come out. And everything that came out when I came out of it and I saw the tape, I was like, what? You
really don't remember saying any of that?
No, I was completely out. The guy that did it was an LAPD cop. He was trained in this, and he was a guy that was trained in traumatic hypnosis to bring out experiences. So this wasn't like somebody that was just pulled off the street. What did they look
like? Was it like was the light talk? Because you've
the light was actually the actual in the hypnosis, the life form is the intelligence.
So that's what I mean. So you didn't see like a being.
No.
But you saw the craft, and it was the one communicating to you, I'll be back.
Yes, it was the light that was communicating. It was the life form, yes.
That is fucking crazy.
And that's partly why Putoff was interested in me, because it ties into what he did with Stargate and consciousness and everything else, which is another whole thing that they're working on, because AI's taken over everything. So they're trying to find a way to put a human consciousness to control AI. Yeah. This is all going on. But I knew about this 10 years ago when I went down there.
Like
they were looking at all that back then.
The next gen fighters are going to have AI. They're going to be.
Well, they already do. They're somewhat
they
controlled by AI. Yeah.
And, the next, and so think about that in 2004. If what you're saying is true, of course, and again, I'm with you. You're saying that there was technology that through a helmet, you could control an F-16 or an F-35 or whatever.
Well, no, it was the helmet was introduced during the Nimitz incident. Favor a minute to that. It was the next generation.
So that's 2004.
Right. But the actual helmet was modified and it really came into play. It was being modified as we went along, so it was part of the F-18. But the real technology helmet is the F-35 helmet.
Right.
That's the final
complete and utter control.
Yeah. Well, there's pictures that came out and they got pulled. Northrop Grumman did it and stuff, where the F-35 through the pilot can control all different kinds of weapon systems and stuff. The airplane can have missiles flying off the airplane, drones, all kinds of stuff, and it's all controlled through the aircraft and the pilot's mind through the helmet. And a lot of this stuff, people say, how the C-17, what happens is the plane takes off, okay, and then the 17 is up in the air, and all this armament is dropped down and meets up with the aircraft. And it's protected in the bubble of the aircraft, which creates the stealth effect. The F-17, it was somewhat the shape and the paint, but it generated a plasma field around it that made it invisible to radar. That's the key to this. But the original fighter had a piece that they had to attach to it before it left. The new fighters have it within the skin of the plane itself that creates the generation effect. The Zumwalt class destroyer has that effect. They put a picture out where they showed it cloaking, disappearing, and coming back as it being able to do that because it has the technology and the computing systems in it to make it disappear, cloak into a different dimension.
So, and again, bits and pieces of truth start to come out. Like, Hal Puthoff and Eric Davis and this new Age of Disclosure documentary. I watch everything that comes out because I like to get the fullest picture I can because I know some of what's being said is bullshit, but there's always the best disinformation has information. So I try to glean what I can from everything. So I'll watch what Greer puts out. I'll watch what James Fox puts out. I'll watch what Jesse, all of them. I consume it all. And then I try to sift through it as best I can. That's what I do.
That's open-mindedness. There's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah. But people give me shit about that.
You have to learn how to separate bullshit from reality.
Exactly. And that's why people always ask me why are you friends with guys like John Alexander? I'm like,
well, Alexander is actually the guy that knows more about this than anybody. He worked at Los Alamos. He actually worked on the technology called non-lethal weapon systems.
He's the father of non-lethal.
Yeah, no, he is. Yeah, and I know John Alexander well. I've dealt with. In fact, he was the one that told me that that's how they got my DNA.
I email with that guy every week, and I talk.
But just remember, John's a spook, and he's not going to give you anything that's already not going to be made or has been made public.
And that's the criticism I get, of course. And they say, "Oh, he's trying to." I say, "No, I keep everyone at an arm's length, and I know what their role is."
Yeah, but you can't. No one can say you're being influenced. As far as what I mean by that is, if you're just a person that listens to what somebody says and runs with it, yeah, you're being influenced. But if you're willing to do your own research and look at everything from an open mind, then that's what I did. And I had to do that for self-preservation to live. Right. I was dying, and I dug into this, and then I went further with this because people asked why I just didn't shut up. I tried, but Green and that group wouldn't let me. If you've been following this, and I get talked about on Cult Cart at least once a month or every other month. Yeah. They talk about me, my DNA, and all that. No one talks about me. Other people bring me up all the time because they've introduced this DNA, the whole shebang. Never mind. And what I try to do is at least be honest on what I believe, and the fact that I don't trust them. I don't trust any of them. But I will say this: if you want to know who the real smoky man is, it's a toss-up between Green and Putoff from the X-Files. Those two are, and Alexander. Those three guys are the real deal. They know what's going on.
Yeah.
They tell you what's going on. And if you've ever dealt with them directly and sat down with them like I have, you think you know what you're talking about right up until you walk away. And then the next thing you know, you're
thousands of questions.
And then you go back and it's a different world. These guys are a whole in a different world. But these guys are definitely in the know on what's going on inside these projects. And one of the things that they said was, and that's another thing, they've never got these guys to testify.
It fucking blows my mind that, Eric Davis, right? Like help put off. They were doing that thing in Congress where it was for like the UAP disclosure fund.
Yeah.
And Eric Davis is sitting there talking about like different types of aliens and shit, and Hal's there and Avi's there and all this. And I'm like, what are we fucking doing, guys? You should be calling them in under oath to tell why are we fucking wasting our time with this? Like, I get why they were doing it, but they should also have been asking them like, hey, Eric, I need to know about the Wilson Davis memo. I want to know more about that. That's what you're most famously known for. Let me bring you into a skiff and let's talk about it. But
see, they couldn't, but he can't talk about it. The guy, like I said, the guy that was the most honest in this was the guy, I forget his name. The guy that testified in the last hearing.
Yeah,
when they got to him, he said, I can't talk about any of this unless we go in the skiff. And even then, I'm not going to be able to talk to you about it anyway, because you don't have the clearance to know about this. And I don't have the permission to talk about it from the agencies that I work with. And that is the truth. That is the underlying truth. Congress, except maybe a few people in the Gang of Eight, even have a clearance or the need to know what's going on.
But do you see the people's point? Do you see the regular person? Do you see the point in if say they were to go in a skiff and they were to tell member of Congress A, we won't put names.
Somebody had the clearance to know about it, right?
But what if they did? Yeah, what if they didn't? Who's gonna are they gonna arrest this person to throw him in the brig and then not have Congress? Like the regular person is like, what? Just tell them. Just tell them that no one's going to come arrest you. No one's going to come do
this. That's not true, though. That's not true, though. Right. But that's not true. Agree. National security trumps everything, whether you like it or not. That's one of the arguments I get about my records. They say I have an access to my records. You don't have access to anything that involves a military incident if you're in the military, if it's classified.
Well, then we're caught in between a rock and a hard place, because now what we do have is a bunch of DOD pre-approved quote unquote whistleblowers, that's not the term. That is not the term for someone who goes through pre-publication through the DOD, gets exactly what they're able to talk about, cleared by the DOD. They are not a whistleblower.
No, but you can't. The thing, though, that's the whole thing. Plus, you're not protected. You're only protected. Okay, whistleblower status is this. You're supposed to follow a protocol. And let's say, for example, I'm working on a project that I feel is being misused or something. I'm not supposed to go public with it. I'm not protected technically by whistleblower status. I'm supposed to go to the Inspector General.
Inspector General, yep.
And they start evaluating it through clearance procedures. Then they go into these agencies, and then the Inspector General is not going to get the answer either. SAP programs are excluded from just about everybody. The only people that have access to them are the people working on the programs. And even within the program is compartmentalized.
It's compartmentalized, yeah.
Yes. And that's why when everybody calls me they don't like me, but it's true. You're never going to get disclosure. You're never going to get the answers. You don't get the answers for how our radars work, our aircraft fly, how they go stealth, how our weapon systems work, where our deployments are exactly, unless they want you to know. Any of that stuff's all classified. People are okay with that. But then they somehow think that then they're going to blow the whistle and tell you everything we know about our exotic technology and how we grasp it, how we're utilizing it, and everything else. This is not going to happen.
Okay. So in your educated experience with all the research that you've done, what do you think you interacted with?
I think I went into a time dilation bubble and I survived it somehow. One of the things that was interesting that I did learn was my genetics were such that normally in mitral valve you have 2 leaflets. I had a 3rd. So I should have died on the spot, but because I had an extra leaflet, it protected me enough that it kept me alive for a few years, and it protected my valve was damaged by what we were exposed to going into it, but I had an extra valve that was in the medical stuff that I was able to get my hands on. So I also think it's possible that there are people that genetics, I mean, it's clear, it's possible, it's real. People have different genetics, but it may have been my genetics were more susceptible to survive this. So for a fact, they clearly were interested in me because I did have an encounter and I did survive something. But what's unknown is, other than it's a UAP, which is an unidentified aerial phenomenon, exactly the nuts and bolts of it aren't, I don't 100% know. I've gotten a better grasp of it through declassified documents and everything else, to include the Marks generator was involved. I've been in a fight with the MOD for 7 months, and it started out with I asked a bunch of questions, and they came back and said, well, there's too much questions here, too much knowledge that you want to know. We have it, but we won't give it to you because it's going to cost too much. Then they came back and said, keep narrowing it down. When I narrowed it down to certain points, they said, oh, well, we don't hold anything on it. I'm in a debate with the DOE right now. I'm in a 5,000 FOIA queue right now on their utilization of Marks generators and projects that I found out about.
Are you leaning more towards one or another? Like,
I think it's both. I think there is for sure. UAPs are real, and it's unidentified aerial phenomenon. I don't necessarily believe it's a biological being. It's an energy force that's intelligent in nature. It's able to do these different things. It probably is interdimensional travel just because it involves time dilation, which is technically interdimensional travel.
Right.
I think that these scientists that are involved know it. I think some of the reason why it's becoming more prevalent and they want to utilize it is because of the advancement to quantum. Quantum is what makes this work. The computing couldn't keep up with the technology to make it work on these things. Putoff got a contract with the BISMA for working on tanks to make them cloak and recloak. One of the problems that they had was it was supposed to go from A to B and it showed up way over somewhere else. So the computing power couldn't keep up with the time change to bring it back to where it started. You know what I mean?
So is that similar to like what happened with, like, say, the Philadelphia experiment?
Yeah, the Marks generator goes back to the Philadelphia experiment. It goes back to Tesla. So something, probably the Philadelphia experiment took place. It just got completely blown out of proportion to keep people from even accepting it possible. Right. And it all goes back to frequencies and manipulation of time.
Yeah. Sound, light, frequency seem to be.
Yeah. And the coloring that you see represents different frequencies. Bruce McAbee's passed now was big into that. And I did a show with him and he broke down what the different coloring meant when you saw it within what this object was doing.
Right. What it meant when you saw it. I have kind of gotten into, I think I've researched into that. And it's kind of weird when you think about it again from a linear standpoint. In the 50s, science, popular mechanics, all the rage was, we're about to crack gravity. Like, we're about to crack gravity. The G engines are coming, and then it goes dark, right? It goes black, and right. It's never heard of again. And I don't think that's because they didn't do it. I think it's because the black programs and the advent of the national security state allowed the infrastructure for it to get compartmentalized, to be brought under the banner of national security. And that's where things get murky, because then, by the time Eisenhower does warn us, he's lost control of this thing called the military industrial complex, because you can't do anything in the military and the government with it being susceptible to FOIA and freedom of information, right? These checks and balances. So you need to push it out to contractors, but that brings in liability. So then you have these, this real muckery that happens between the government and the private contractors, because who holds the ownership?
Well, if you really want to understand the contract part of it, watch the movie Angels Has Fallen. And it doesn't go into UFOs, but it talks about how Angels Has Fallen. It's a movie. And it talks about how the contract companies control our government more than people realize. Like right before we pulled out of Afghanistan, there was 20,000 personnel over there. 15,000 of them were contractors. Only 5,000 military personnel were there. So the contract companies control this, and that's how they hide all this stuff. It's under the patent rules, the laws, and everything else. And most people don't even know where to start, because if you don't even know which company exists and what project they're working on, which goes back to SAP programs, and again, God help these Congress people, but they don't even know what they're voting on. They've admitted they don't even know where the money, what projects this money's going to. They just have a number. Well, this project needs $5 billion. This project needs $20 billion, and they vote on it. But then they complain that they don't have oversight. Well, that's the way the systems come to. They control it, and it's
designed to do that.
Yeah, it's designed to keep it secret, whether you agree with it or not. Then you go into the whole UFO thing. Have we been lied from the beginning on our own existence?
Right? Isn't that a crazy thing? Yeah. What do you now getting into obviously we're going to get into some speculative territory, and I would love to have you back on the show.
Okay.
To do as many parts. I mean, maybe we'll talk off air, but I would love to bring you in person.
Well, I think you need to read the book when it comes out.
I will absolutely.
It goes into all this stuff. It's an open book I'm putting out. I'm talking about every involvement, everything I had, everything I've learned. I have a FOIA from the MOD admitting that they actually have developed UAP technology.
Well, you fascinate me because you seem to see through the bullshit, and you're able to.
But here's the thing: you have to understand something. Two things opened up my eyes. One, I was dying, but I was also in. Most of the guys that were involved in this incident got out. I stayed in until 2004, but I technically was until 6. I was deployed for Bosnia and for Tora Bora and for the invasion of Iraq. And I was exposed to technology I can't talk about.
You were enlisted during the Operation Iraqi Freedom?
Yeah. I stayed in. I got out of active in 88, but stayed in reserves because of my specialty. I got pulled back in constantly. And I was brought back in after 9/11, and I deployed overseas. I was involved in the Bosnia incident, which nobody knows half of what really went on with that when that went on with Clinton and special operations. And then I was involved with Tora Bora, which was the whole thing having to do with Osama bin Laden.
Yeah,
and then I was involved, and I was involved in the Iraqi invasion. In fact, I was at a classified site that's still playing a part in everything that's going on right now to this day over there, and all the technology that was involved back then. So what was utilized opened my eyes. It opened my eyes. In fact, some of the stuff I saw helped explain what happened to us in Rendlesham Forest.
Well, that's what I would love. That's why I think I want to bring you, either come to you or after the book comes out. Of course, I'll read it. And what is it called? So I'll link it. I'll put
the book is this. When we get it out, it's going to be called Project Rendlesham Crossing the Threshold. Now, I don't have the name of the book. I wish I did, but I wrote a 84-page book that came out in May. And a guy just evaluated that's involved in technology. He was shocked. That particular book lays out all the agencies that are involved, including an agency you probably never heard of called Net Assessment. Now, that goes back to the exotic technology. And a guy that was involved with this, his call sign was Yoda, and his name was Andy Marshall. And he ran this agency called the Net Assessment. and it just got disbanded. Now, I can't confirm that when I put the book out, they disbanded it, but right after the book hit the shelves, the Net Assessment Office was disbanded.
Coincidence?
And this really goes, I don't know, but it really goes into the in-depth part of the agencies and the technology that they've been working on and how they've developed it. It's an 84-page book. And that was to set up this next book, Crossing the Threshold.
Crossing the Threshold is and that will be available.
It should be hopefully before the end of the month.
Okay.
We've got a lot of things. I'm still trying to tie up the FOIA stuff. They drug me on for months with the FOIA, the MOD.
Really?
Yeah, with not giving me answers and lead me on and everything else, and the DOE. But ultimately,
and then the government shutdown happens, and they just don't.
But they shut the Net Assessment Office off, and most people don't even know what that is. Just don't. Get the book. It's an 84-page book. I'll send it to you afterwards. I wish I had it written down. But it really goes into the agencies and the involvement, especially the Net Assessment Office.
Okay. So is it, am I on the right track in thinking, okay, so in Age of Disclosure, the one, again, I'm not saying that everything in that is accurate or even true. Again, I think you have a bunch of intelligence guys telling you their version of the story, which is the pre-publicized DoD version of the story. So, but beside that, what they talk about is the overseeing the arch, the dog that ties it all together is the CIA, and then under that you have DOE, you have DOE, Department of Energy, the Air Force, and there was one other that I was thinking of, but you said, and then there's the NatSec thing.
It was the Net Assessment Office.
Net Assessment.
Andy Marshall was the father of all exotic technology. His group worked on all of that. And not only that, but he groomed all the Secretary of States right through Bill Gates. And he was involved in the actual falling of Russia. He was part of the Russian doctrine and stuff with SDI and everything else. This guy, he's passed now, but Obama got rid of him. Trump brought him back under his first administration, and then he passed after Trump came out of office. But that office is neck deep in all this. But all I'm saying is, when they put this book out right afterwards, they actually, and I've confirmed it, Net Assessment, they made an announcement through Department of War that was disbanded.
That's
but it's still there. They've just moved it into 2 or 3 other agencies.
Of course.
But here's the key. You can't get any information because the agency doesn't exist anymore. So you can't do any FOIA, which I did. I actually did some FOIA on the Net Assessment Office.
Yeah, because now when you look for it, no such program exists.
No, it's been disbanded. Yeah.
Right. So that becomes a huge issue in the FOIA process. So I can't even imagine. So I want to get into a little bit of speculation, but when you look at things like the pyramids or these megalithic structures across the globe, and the idea of religion and what it means, right? Like the themes and the common threads that seem to tie these origin stories together. Have you looked at any of that and pondered, were they seeing the same things that you're seeing and you experience through a different lens and with a different language, like, obviously a different lens they're looking at it through. They don't have quite the vernacular we do. So we call it aliens. They call it gods. I mean, have you ever looked at
you can go to different cultures through the history of this planet, and there's different stuff the natives drew on walls, different things that were written about it. Unfortunately, the first thing that happened, which is in this book that I just put out, the Obscura Echo Protocol, which is a science fiction book, but it really goes into how the balance was taken away from Earth when they completely destroyed the Western Hemisphere. They came over from Europe and destroyed the cultures. their belief system, everything that they had, everything they believed in, what they worshipped as gods and everything else. That was all destroyed. Now, allegedly, the Vatican has some of it hidden, but the Mayas and all that. But they completely unbalanced the earth itself when they completely eliminated all that. And you have to go back and ask yourself, why were there two different, the East and the West? And then you have to ask, they want to call this the old world, and it's actually the new world. And even Churchill said it called it the new world, not the old world. So the new world came over and destroyed, the old world came over and destroyed the new world and the cultures. So, and Catholicism, it took over a lot of it early. And now Muslims are becoming more and more prevalent.
Prominent,
Prominent. But I'm just saying, there's always been a battle with cultures, religion, what they could have seen or not seen. I was told by somebody in government that is still in government that just substitute alien for God and you have your answer.
That's what, and again, like, that's how I'm looking at it and seeing it is, what if what we're experiencing now is what our ancestors experienced and tried to tell us through their own language? I mean, obviously, like a fire-breathing dragon in the sky. What does that sound like? Well, it sounds like, a rocket or something, right? Shooting fire out the back.
There's a book out there, and I can't think of the name of it. I'm working on something with that right now, and I'm not trying to hold the book back. But it was a NASA official tried to discredit the von Daniken's work, and he couldn't do it. It's an old book. And he looked at it, but he said what was reported in the Bible as chariots and stuff was probably alien ships or something to the fact that came here and visited Earth and seeded Earth. Well, that's what's
funny is, and not to interrupt you, but the common theme being that this being, and Jesus said it too. So down to Christianity, the same message that you got from that craft, it'll be coming back. That's the theme, right? This God always promises that they'll return.
Yeah.
And
right. Well, that's part of the book I'm talking about. I talk about how we messed up everything, but the big threat right now to humanity is actually AI through NHI. So non-human intelligence is controlling AI. So, and what people don't understand about AI is just like what they did with DNA. That DNA stuff that they've done where everybody sends their DNA and analyze is going into a major database.
I've never
I know, but they're studying all the DNA out there. So what they're studying is a lot different than what they're giving you a report back on. But the real true DNA study has to come through blood. It's not through saliva. That's the nuts and bolts. That's where mine was done through saliva through a lab in Pennsylvania. But the study that Putoff and those guys were working was a blood draw.
Right.
And that's when they can get down to the nitty gritty, which by the Hopi claim that the secrets are hidden in our DNA. They've always said that the secrets that's what they were looking at, our blood and the genetic markers. And what bloodlines do they go back to and everything else. Plus the mind itself is only being used about 10%. But so they were studying the mind to see the markers in the mind and stuff like that. So these are real studies they were doing, but they're not giving any real reports on what they've learned.
Isn't it weird that the same people in Silicon Valley, like they're racing, they're sprinting with AI when they should be, slow crawling. And then they're trying to warn, like the Peter Thiels of the world. They worry me because, when he's not doing defense contracts and investing in these, companies and running Palantir, he's giving 4-part lectures on the Antichrist, and it's like it's very weird to me, the ties between Silicon Valley and what they're doing right now. And, some of the esoteric things. You can always
you can always throw the Antichrist in. I mean, that's one of the things that's supposedly going on inside government. They're fighting over is what aliens are, the Antichrist, the fallen angels. But again, there's not enough evidence to support it one way or another. You have to go off of what we've been told. But what I do believe, based on what I was exposed to and documents and everything else, that AI is a danger because it takes away our critical thinking skills.
It just like how, I mean, you know this better, probably, of course, better than I do, but I remember I used to know every single person's phone number.
Yeah.
You know, there was a time when GPS didn't exist, and there was a time when, like, the Magellan GPS, because my dad owned a moving company, so GPS is like the ones that you could get in the car, the Magellan ones. Though that was like top tier technology at the time, because it allowed you to then start like driving and getting the fastest route, and then with phones and all that, like you stopped being able to retain information in our.
Well, you can't make change or anything, right? Most people don't even know how to spell. They have a general idea and they let spell check take care of it.
Yeah, or they don't even teach cursive in school anymore.
No, or even how to read regular time.
Doesn't make it.
So
it makes me so.
But it is, and what they don't understand with AI, if you go like in the ChatGPT, it's kind of like Star Trek and the Borg. Okay, I have my own account, so everything that I research and go into goes into that, is saved. But then all my stuff goes into another bigger account. So everything people are curious about, everything you're working on, all the stuff is going into a collective. And so AI and NHI is learning about what we know, what we can do, and how to manipulate us.
Yeah, we're giving it. You know, John, I was actually terrified. I know I have a friend, and I'm not going to say the name, because honestly, if she hears it, she'll know who she is. And if you do hear this, I'm sorry, I'm telling this story, but it concerns me. I was talking to this person. This person doesn't even have fucking Facebook or Twitter or anything. And I've always had such respect for this person's ability to stay off social media. And like, right. I used to tell people, like, hey, I have this one friend, that's not on social media. And we got to talking the other night, and she started talking to me about how she's been talking to ChatGPT. And then in talking about it, she goes, and I tell her and I went, whoa, what? I tell her she's assigning it gender like it's a fucking person. And I'm like, dude, like, hey, be careful. Like, I don't know what, like, did you mean to do that? Like, that it's not a they or them, like, it's not a thing. It's so, like, going over this. And I'm like, and for all the reasons you've stayed off social media, you're now telling it your biggest secrets. You're telling it your flaws. You're telling it your deepest thoughts, and you don't think that somewhere some billionaire's going to extort that data.
Yeah, but it may even be deeper. I really do believe there's non-human intelligence out there.
Yeah, some say.
I'm just not supporting the biological part of it. I think that if I had to take an educated guess right now, it's something from the future that we've evolved to, or something that came from somewhere else that's come down here and we eventually have to evolve to, that it's affecting everything. But if you really look at AI, it's going to replace almost everything we do. Slowly but surely. The only thing that's going to hold it up short term is the energy. They don't have the energy or the water.
The infrastructure. But
they don't have it yet. They don't have it slowing it down.
Here's a little tidbit for you. I don't mean to be conspiracy guy, but this, like, this ballroom that they're making right now?
Oh, you talking about it, the DC?
Indeed, at the White House. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Well, Israel built this, like, data center for AI, and it costs like a certain number, whatever it was. And you need a certain amount of space. So someone brought it up to me and they were like, here's the price of what the data center for Israel cost, yada, yada, yada. And then they showed me the amount of money that was donated by big tech companies towards this ballroom and the dimensions of it. And they said, isn't it coincidental that it costs? So the exact amount that this data center in Israel costs, and it could be coincidence, of course, but all the tech companies donated all this money, all of them. And then T-Mobile, I don't know if you want to call that a big tech company, but I guess they are. Lockheed Martin, Facebook, Meta, Google, OpenAI, they're all donating this money to this ballroom. And it's what the guy was saying was the ballroom might be what you can see, but underground, he thinks they might be building one of these data centers, because that's like a big point of contention right now. Like you said, is the infrastructure to power these AI, things. So that is speculation. That's probably not true. I thought it was coincidence.
They're probably upgrading the White House because they did with the bunker and everything else that they have.
Wouldn't you?
Yeah, but again, I can't believe the White House still sits where it does. I would think there's different facilities,
especially
and stuff.
After 9/11.
Yeah, there's different facilities. There's one. It's Raven Rock. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's in Pennsylvania. That's something that's tied directly to Camp David, and the president can go up there and be protected. But
like things like Cheyenne Mountain, that's public knowledge. That's what we know that they publicly do, and that's that base is crazy. It's crazy.
No, there's a lot of stuff that no one's aware of. But anyway.
But bringing that up, I don't know if angels and demons exist, but I know evil and good exists.
Mm-hmm.
And these AI models, it seems like it's searching for, like, it's running and it's trying to find some sort of model where it can create a body for itself, and like it feels kind of demonic, to be honest. But regardless of that,
the one thing I could say, probably because we're probably getting close to wrapping up, is this: all of this goes back to 1980. I firmly believe that area in England was a major part, even prior to that, in the advancement of exact technology, and including UAP technology, because there is an area there that UAPs exist. It's real. There's an energy force there, and all of that. And that's part of the reason why I'm interested in all this, ties back to what happened to us in 1980.
So, I mean, when it told you that it was going to come back, have you had any, people talk about like the hitchhiker effect and that kind of stuff. Have you had any other experiences? I know a lot of the other guys have said they have. Have you had any experiences that you can't explain since the Rendlesham incident?
There's two things that's happened to me. I lived in Sedona for 2 years, and I had some weird stuff happen out by Bradshaw Ranch.
That's a weird place.
Yeah, that is. All Sedona is completely, and there was stuff all around in the sky and stuff that couldn't be explained. And then I went up to Skinwalker a couple of years ago. Originally, I was going to get to go on it, and then all of a sudden I got denied at the last second. But we were outside the back area. And
by whom?
Well, the story is,
who denied?
Well, Fugel said no problem, handed it over to his chief scientist, and then all of a sudden the scientist came back at the last second and wouldn't let me go on.
Eric?
So that's there's another guy that was involved, and that's what happened. So we'd already made plans to go up there anyway. So we went out and we were outside the back area, the back part that sits off the highway. And when we were out there, all kinds of weird stuff happened for a couple hours, about an hour while we were out there flying around and everything. We could see the facility, the vehicles driving around in the main area from where we were back behind it. But originally they were going to let me on, and then they they backed off, let me on.
Did
The
you-
story we were told was, and I'm just telling you what we were told, okay? I'm not telling you I believe this, but the people involved feel I can manipulate the phenomenon.
Huh.
That whatever happened to me, or whatever the capabilities I have, I can affect the phenomenon itself. And they didn't want me on the site.
That
is what
seems
we
like
were
the
told.
opposite of what I mean, I would want to bring you on if you could do that.
I'm just telling you what I was told.
Yeah,
I don't know what to believe or whatever, but that was the final explanation on. Fugel didn't have a problem with it. The scientists eventually came back.
Would you go back if given the opportunity?
I wouldn't go back unless it was 100% guaranteed. I've always wanted to go to Skinwalker because Bigelow tracked me down forever, was tracking me down through his cronies, I call them, for years. And I always said, every time they call me, and eventually I think I ended up meeting with the highest level before him, which was Putoff, Green, and those guys. But it would be lower level people before that. I always said, I'll be happy to talk about it when Bigelow meets me on the ranch. And they'd say, well, we'll get back to you. And I'd always get the answer back. Mr. Bigelow is not interested in meeting you on the ranch. I said, all right, well, then Mr. Bigelow is not going to get to talk to me through his cronies. If he wants to know what I know, I'll talk to him directly on the ranch. So I've always wanted to go to the ranch. And it was interesting when I met with Kelleher and Nolan and Flagg. That was one of the things I told him. I said, I'm not going to do it now, but you could bait me by letting me go up to the ranch. And then Kelleher his eyes got huge, and even Nolan, they said, oh, you can't go up there. And I go, why? Because of what's happened to you and what's happened to you and everything else, it wouldn't be good for you or the phenomenon to go up there. So that I did hear that once before. Pat, my attorney, was right there when they wouldn't let me go up on the ranch. So
whoa. So, but no paranormal, like no UFO sightings since then?
Well, just what was in the sky, which was, I would call them UAPs, were flying around.
Yeah, aside from the Sedona.
Those were the only two, incidents.
Okay.
Both of them were unknown areas where UAPs exist. Because Bradshaw Ranch is a UAP site, not a UFO site. And I believe Skinwalker is too. I've never heard of them ever talking about a craft, but I could be wrong about Skinwalker.
Yeah, it's mostly like lights and cryptids and
right.
dimensional portals, electromagnetic anomalies, and that sort.
Right. So those both tie more into UAPs.
The only thing where I can think about that they talk about craft, like nuts and bolts craft, is I think some of what they think now is that buried in the mesa, from some of the data that they've gathered through like ground penetrating radar and other sensory equipment, is that there's this in the mesa, there's a metallic tic-tac structure.
Okay.
I don't know.
There could be a pyramid underneath there. That was one of the things that they speculated at Bradshaw because of the fact, I mean, most people don't know this, but Sedona has a time stupa, which is the only one in the world.
What's that
mean? The Buddhists put a time stupa in Sedona. South and West, it's a stupa that it manipulates through meditation time. They actually have stupas. You can go online and investigate it. Different stupas around the world. They only have one time stupa, and it's located in Sedona. And they've tied in a version of the medicine wheel, which is what the Native Americans have up in Wyoming. Whoa. So they have a medicine wheel and a time stupa in Sedona, out of West Sedona, over by Bradshaw Ranch. And the Buddhists control the time stupa. The Buddhists live there. They have a house, and it's a real Buddhist time stupa that they do ceremonies and everything else with.
And the government
sits right at the base of a major mountain. I think it's called Chimney Rock. And when we were up there, we saw ravens disappear into the mountain.
What the fuck?
It's a weird place. I'm not going to make this up. If you want to go up and have a weird experience, a chance,
Sedona would be the place.
Go to Sedona. There's something there. I'm not trying to sell it. I don't know anything there.
No, I know
don't have
a bunch of people.
But some people do. They want you to come there to make money off of you. I'm going to tell you, there's something to Sedona There, I don't know exactly what. I lived there for 2 years, right at the right two streets from Bell Rock, which is another whole thing that's in the culture of the phenomenon itself and stuff. It's weird. That area is weird.
Yeah. Did you just flicker off like I did?
Yeah, something went weird with the whole thing.
That's
Everything went bizarre. Yeah.
What the hell was that?
I don't know. It's happened before with me in different interviews. All of a sudden, technology starts acting on.
It changed my microphone, my cameras, everything.
Things can happen. Just who knows what it is. I never get worried about it anymore. I mean, some people believe it's the phenomenon itself.
Right after mentioning Sedona.
Yeah,
anyway,
it is weird. I will tell you, if you ever want to visit a place that you can go to.
So you're on your journey. You're writing books. You're staying involved. You're 6.
Well, for short term, I'm hoping.
Where can people? Where can people find the book when it does come out?
Okay, it's going to be on Amazon. Veritas.
Definitely want to have you back on to some degree, whatever fashion that comes in. But where can people continue with what you're doing?
Can you still hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, I want to make sure. Okay, right now, Verisop Obscura is available. It's Verisop Obscura Echo Protocol. It's available on Amazon. Project Rendlesham Crossing the Threshold. Hopefully, it'll be out in the next 2 weeks. We're finishing up the stuff, and I'm been doing a thing every week on KGRA about Verisop Obscura, but ultimately, I don't plan on being around much longer with this. I've said about everything I could say. The book will cover everything, my experiences. If something weird happens where some kind of disclosure comes out, as people want to call it, what I mean is the government starts opening up more to this, I could draw me in. Or let's say somebody actually gets the government to admit my files are classified. I'm not saying I won't ever talk about it again, but at this point in time, it's called insanity. You just keep chasing your tail. I've pretty much said everything I can. I'll probably do a few more interviews, but there's really not much more to say until somebody in authority convinces the American people what we're really dealing with.
You know what? That is pretty respectable. I think that's pretty respectable.
So, and I'm not sure who that person is going to be. A lot of people now are speculating Trump is going to do it. So he might. I mean, I'm not saying he won't, but that's been every president's going to give us disclosure, and they come and go, and we never hear anything. So.
Well, I think there's a specific there's for Trump being the person that he is, right? You know that he wants to leave his legacy, some sort of legacy. I think to date right now, he's kind of been polarizing. Like if he's realistic about it and he zooms out, I mean, the contention and the this time will be talked about, but like, will Trump be like in the history books? I think there's one way to do that, and that's to, as pressure is mounting, as the general public starts to open up and really clamor for, transparency, and whether it's the Epstein files or this or that, we're in the age of, maybe we're not in the age of disclosure, but we're in the age of information, and the government, they're no longer going to be able to operate under the guises that they do, because if it continues down the path that we're on, it's either going to be some sort of civil war or uprising, because tensions are boiling.
Can I make a statement though? Really honestly, okay. Be careful what you wish for. Okay, what happened back in the revolution cannot happen today. They control too much. They control the money. They control the commodities. They control the technology and everything else. And the key to all this, besides that, is the military. So unless the military were to want to turn on leadership, which I find it hard to believe because they're neck deep in all this stuff and they support secrets, that you can huff and puff and yell and scream and say we're going to overthrow our government, but we can't even get 80% of the population to vote in a general election. So if we can't get people to come forward and come out and go to the vote, then go and voice their opinion peacefully, not violently, peacefully go out and put pressure on these people in government. How are we going to think that we're going to get the government to admit anything when they control everything that's important? To include, I don't want to get into the political side of COVID, but we shut down over COVID. Not that it wasn't real, not that people didn't die, but if they can get us that to turn on each other that quickly and do everything they did with us, imagine what they could do with UFOs.
Bingo. You actually raise a very, very good point there.
So just be careful what you wish for. I'd like to see things get better, and I hope they do, but a revolution is not going to take place because the last thing I'll say is people aren't really willing to sacrifice what you'd have to sacrifice. Because just look at Canada. Do you remember those guys that demonstrated about COVID? True. They cut their bank accounts away.
Yep, they arrested
them. They put them in jail. So that was just over COVID. Imagine what they would do if there was a movement to overthrow government.
Right.
Just look at January 6th. There are people still, I believe, maybe not, maybe you got them all out, but there were still people before Trump came in, back in as president, still locked up in cells in dungeons.
Like 50-year-old women who walked into the Capitol. There was definitely violence, but there was also I think people need to zoom out and realize that there was also 240 FBI agents that were there.
Right. But and I'm not trying to make this political. I'm just saying, ultimately, if just look at a couple of examples and everybody thinks we're going to have a revolution. Well, the first thing a revolution could be real is if we could get the majority of the registered voters to vote. And then second of all, get everybody else that's eligible to register to vote. Then maybe we can make a difference. But if we can't even do that, how are we going to form a revolution?
You're right. You're right. You bring up a very, very good point, my friend. But John, this was absolutely a pleasure. You're someone I could definitely talk to for literal hours. So that's impressive. It's not every day I speak to someone who's as quick as me on thinking. I'm a very fast-paced interviewer, and geez, I had trouble keeping up with you at some points. You're a really, really fun person, and I know you said you wanted to kind of fade into the horizon for a while.
Well, I just believe you can only talk so much before you become irrelevant. You know what I mean?
I respect that. I'd love to. Any of the other people that you're in touch with, as far as Rendlesham goes, I would love to, talk to some of them as well. But
I think you should just go down the list yourself and approach them. Colonel Halt's still here. I don't know how much longer because he's getting older. You got Peniston's out there. There's a few other people that have make public what they said. Bring them on, talk to them.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I'm so past arguing about Rendlesham because ultimately, at the end of the day, Rendlesham is got so many facets to it and so many disagreements that it's hard to take the case serious sometimes.
Yeah.
Because of some of the things that have been said that are out there. But I firmly believe in this latest, I put out a different book called Weaponization of the UAP, which we exposed some of the technology that was there outside the back gate. I firmly believe everything that I put out, I know it's real and it can be sourced and documented. So I don't try to get to the hypothetical as least as possible. I try to show you what I believe is going on and why and where it goes to, not so much the hypothetical and stuff. And there is hypothetical because no one really knows what the dark secrets really are.
Right.
They're there. They're there.
Right. So. They are. Well, with that being said, with everyone, you know what it is. Leave me a thought. Stay humble, stay kind, and question everything. All right. We'll see you guys next time. Thank you, John. Again,
thanks for having me on.
Thank you for your service to this country.
Thanks.
Bye.